Maybe I'll put a link to the old one as well.
Right, great. All right, so thank you, Randy. Well, in that case, given you're better organized than I am, I hereby nominate you as the screen sharer to run this session.
Oh no,
So,
okay, hold on.
You're already ahead of me. But if we have a look at, maybe worth having a quick look at what we did for the roadmap 2021 and the way it worked. And so in the 2021, if you have a look at that link that Randy just put in the chat, which is the project/1, and what we did in previous years, we just kept updating that one project. So Randy's proposed this year we create a new project and leave the 2021 there and then create a new one. So we can see the sort of promises we made, and Randy and I had a look through this earlier today, and we reckon we got about a 50% hit rate on meeting the things that we planned to do for 2021. Of course, we got a lot of things done that weren't in this list, but quite a number of the items we did get done nicely. Some of them are still pending. So we had the text improvements that Paul talked about today. That was listed as we were hoping to get that in this year, but that's going to be obviously the next release, not for 4.2.
The like we say every year, it's the purpose of the list is not to like it's not like strictly enforced. The purpose is really just to share with other developers. It's just a method for sharing with other developers what you think you're going to work on. It's not like it's
it's aspirational.
Exactly, yeah, and it's that information sharing, and so not trying to force people to.
All right. Well, I'm going to start adding some items under plain.
Maybe I should unmute. So the new one, I've created the same columns as last year, but obviously we can add new columns. We've got new vehicles this year, like the blimp, etc. So, but yeah, for now we've got system level, EKF, copter, heli, plane, rover, boat, docks, simulation.
Should we copy over anything? Like, should we just copy this and then delete what's done, or?
I don't know. I was thinking, that's why I had the two of them there. I mean, you might even be able to drag and drop them. I'm not sure, but I was thinking we would just recreate them, so we copy and paste them or something. But I think.
Okay, you cannot drag and drop. It looks like.
No.
Or maybe just refresh the list. Just delete what is done or what is not needed to be tracked and stuff like that. Just update this roadmap even.
We could update the existing one if you want, but I already created 2022. But, I mean, the way we're supposed to do it is as things were done, we're supposed to, drag them over here into the done column. But we didn't actually end up maintaining the list very much during the year. But I think we should decide what we're going to do, whether we're going to either use a new project, which Tridge is already.
I'm running ahead on the new one.
Yeah.
I think we just go with that.
I'm halfway there.
Tridge has already done his bit.
I'm filling in 2 columns.
Like 30 seconds ago, there was empty. Now there's like 20 items on here.
Well, I've put in 5.
Anyway. So
I guess at some point we should slip in Ethernet here.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, yeah. Well, do you want to add it in there, or shall I add it in there, Tom?
Oh, no, I'll do it.
You do it. Okay.
Sid and I will tag team.
Yeah.
Everybody has the ability to add items here. I don't know. Sometimes GitHub, it's all part of GitHub, right? So GitHub has some funny permissions sometimes.
Hey Tom, Ethernet is so last year. You should be going to Wi-Fi.
Now, system level. Where are we going to put remote ID? System level? Or really, it's almost its own column.
Well, we can add one.
What telemetry? If there's any other telemetry things we could think of?
We put other hardware over here or something, maybe.
I might just put it on the system level.
Remote ID, system level, sorry.
Yeah, I think system level probably, but it'll actually stretch across a whole lot of things, remote ID. So I'll just put it as remote ID support in there, but that's a really high priority one. I think I
I
might
mean,
start organizing regular
think-
meetings with Jeff about that.
I think we
The other
need
thing with,
another table for like AP perif probably.
Yeah.
And
Peripheral
I think
visitors,
remote ID should go there. And I think remote ID should probably go there. I'm not sure. Right.
Yeah, it isn't completely clear. I mean, we may end up with multiple solutions, some AP proof based, some not. But it's given that the new ESP32s do the Bluetooth level 5, I think it's called, that you mentioned earlier, Buzz. I'm intrigued about discussing that with Jeff. Is there any reason why an ESP32 AP proof node can't become a remote ID with Bluetooth? Because that would be
whether or not you know, which I wasn't paying a lot of attention in the remote ID talk, whether or not we need a particular version of Bluetooth like 4 or 5. Did he mention?
Might be worth going back and rewatching that talk, but I'd like to have a bit of a discussion with Jeff, maybe with you on the line as well, Buzz, about that and do.
Four is supported. I think 4 is supported at least early on. The new spec might be 5 only, but 5 is definitely preferred due to its longer range.
Yeah, well, I've got in my hands a chip that does 4 and a chip that does 5. So
we'd pick the one that does 5, assuming they're available.
Yeah.
with remote ID, there's not only obviously the broadcast component of that, but also the ground control stations to receive it and the avoidance behaviors from the aircraft themselves. So there's quite a number of very different but interrelated components to that remote ID stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot to it.
That's why they wanted Bluetooth. Actually, one of the driving for that in particular is because it's easy to have cell phones listening on it. It's kind of out of the box.
Just need to install a government app that we're all going to trust.
Yeah, that was it. When Jeff was talking about that, who was in the audience on all those discussions, and it was the police and the fire and whatnot, and it was because they didn't want to buy an extra device to do this. They wanted to have pull up their own phone and be able to do it.
There you go. There's a small item with a big implications, dual H7 support. I think
wasn't there something to support the math double precision of the H7s? And bring
we've already got that. We've actually incorporated double precision in 4.2.
For the H7 only, right?
No, F765 also, we do it. So we can do it on all boards that support double precision natively. So that's the F7, the higher end F7s and all the H7s. But the F765 supports it fine. So things like Pixhawk 4 does it by default in 4.2 release, Copter Plane Rover. And that's one of the things we needed to do to allow us to support very long distance operation. That wasn't the moving origin was the other big part of it, but the double precision was a worthwhile improvement. But really the big improvement of that was the navigation code for Copter and the numerical stability of the EKF.
Yeah. The thing that you spoke in the beginning of the conference, the move to the new GBOs release.
Yep, I've got that listed. I've got that under system level 21.11 Shibios release.
Yeah, but it's not here on the new 2022.
Yes, it is. It's under system level. It is the 5th one down on the system level.
You've added a bunch of them. I didn't refresh my screen.
Yep. No, I've been throwing them in there.
Yeah.
I was wondering about the cloud stuff. So we had that great presentation earlier with about the cloud.
I've just added a new column called everything else, cloud, web.
Okay, cool.
That's a good idea. Yep.
We should get rid of this. Maybe we don't need this simulation one. Maybe we're not planning to do much in that.
Well, I'm just adding one for simulation, the ignition stuff, all the boats. And so don't take my simulation column.
We need a one-hit wonder button for simulation.
Yeah, I'm adding that as the first item, ignition simulation, easier launch. So we need to make it really easy. At the moment, it's a bit of an ordeal to get ignition up and running, very worthwhile. It's a bit slow, especially with the wave. The wave model with the ocean is quite CPU intensive. So some work on perhaps less high fidelity waves, but a bit less CPU intensive waves would be nice.
What was the name of that application for the demonstration? Sorry, was it?
Drone Engage?
Yeah, okay, great.
Drone Engage and
Andrew AV, ANDRUAV.
Andrew UAV. Yeah, there's multiple pieces to it.
Drone Engage is
going
kind
through.
of,
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, go on.
So Andrew UAV is the Android port of it, and when he decided he wanted to run on other things, he renamed the non-Android part to Drone Engage. Or Drone Engage.
And then it's up under cloud.rgpilot.org. We got permission from the funding committee to create a virtual machine for him, and that's what he's using. That's what's cloud.rgpilot.org.
And I've created him a Discord channel that is called Andrew UAV.
Okay, I was suggesting he could use AP Cloud, but
I think so.
either.
I think we've got a few too many channels. I think we should try and consolidate.
I think he could share AP Cloud. There's a lot of commonality there.
Yeah, even the companion computer one. Otherwise, we get all fragmented into little tiny groups, and then the conversation doesn't progress. I think we should.
Well, given they're completely different ecosystems, I thought they might start out separate. But we can change that if we need to.
Just need more grouping friends in Discord. Most Discord servers are grouped far further than ours. You should check them out with far more channels.
Really? More channels?
Oh yeah. Like go check out the tax server. Let's see, I'm in Zephyr. I have gaming ones, of course, with way more channels and way nicer.
You have 10,000 users. I mean, if you have 10,000 gamers or something, I can imagine you want to break them up into little groups of 10 or something.
So do we want to add DroneCam stuff into this as well, or we are keeping it separate?
We've sort of got that under system level at the moment.
I mean, stuff like, new DroneCam C++ library and stuff like that, like application library. Where should that go? I mean, is that DroneCam?
Probably system level, because I don't have a wide enough screen for another column.
Not another column. I'm wondering if it should even go in the RD Pilot organization, or it's more like a DroneCam specific thing.
Oh, I see. But we're going to be working on it. I mean, very likely. So
yeah,
I don't think it's unreasonable to have things there. I've already added the node capabilities. It's the first item. It was the first one I added under system level.
Yeah, I also had the message extension, but then I realized, okay, I guess we are using system level then.
Oh, there we are. I was gonna say we need ship landing support in Copter, but Leonard's already put it in there.
Where should the Barrow stuff go in?
That ECAF estimation, maybe?
And then I'd also like to get in an actual full model for the US 1976 model.
I think ECAF estimation is the best place for that. Even though if it's not all in the ECAF, I think it's altitude estimation, isn't it? So in here.
Oh, by the way, Randy, I was just looking at the item from last year about the missing features from EKF2. We'd pretty much brought those features across from a copter perspective. I think from plane we have.
Cool. I don't think there's any missing pieces for copter anymore. I'll move over there.
One of the things we've got to decide is whether we stop it. Yes, we're gone.
I want to bring this up just because it kills me that we still don't have this, but the ability to store strings in the parameters. I don't know who can jump on that grenade, but
that would probably be me. One thing I did actually work on this morning that I will put it in system level so I can claim it for this next year. Proper storage of the default values of parameters, so you can download via the MAV FTP all the defaults. So that means that default parameter list.
Yeah,
that's different from the defaults that are stored on our server from compile time. This includes the defaults.parm effect and any set default, which will give the ability for ground stations to properly show what's different from default.
An option to compact the storage. Well, I guess it's actually not all that important if we've got the feature that you're talking about. Come to think of it.
Yeah, maybe. So we'd have to, garbage collection of storage is a possibility, but it was a fairly small patch I did this morning that it now enables us to accurately store, I haven't PR'd it yet, I only did it this morning, accurately store the defaults, and that's the basic enabling feature we needed.
Do we have Lua-based flight mode here?
Yeah.
Okay, Tridge, have you added the custom build server in here at all yet? I'm sort of trying to look for it, not seeing it. Adding stable and other branches.
Yes, that's a good point, and I'm guessing that goes under system level because just lacking anything else. So
web column if you wanted to. It's kind of a bit of
yeah, I guess there is a web column there. Docs Wiki one, you think? Is that
Docs Wiki, or even further over the very, very right, if you have a super wide window, there's an everything else.
My browser wasn't wide enough. There is an everything else cloud. Okay, all right. So I will put it in there. And so that is custom build server branch support. And I have sort of scoped out how to do that, and I don't think it's a really big task. I think it's actually probably like a one weekend's job type thing.
Are you going to squeeze the ESP32 build into that one, or is it another separate task?
The ESP is much easier to add than the multi-branch that as we discussed earlier when Nick was on the call. It was it's not hard at all.
Also, another thing to evaluate maybe in the systems level is the GBOS sandboxes. Have you had a look, tried it, Twitch?
I've looked at it, and I had quite a long discussion with Bob about those. Right. I haven't yet found a compelling reason why we should use them. And they're going to, if we use it, for example, for Lua, it would make Lua much, much slower. Because of the way he did the calls, the system call interface. And I don't think we really want to make our system call interface in Lua that much slower. So for the moment, I don't think it's right for us, but we might change our mind in the future.
Does the sandbox have like this dual core kind of setup where two cores interact? Is there an RPC? Like remote process communication between the two cores and stuff like that implemented in GBOS, if you're aware?
So the sandboxing is an RPC mechanism, but I haven't heard any discussions about the interaction between that and multi-core support. We basically haven't looked at multi-core yet using that F4. That's a matter of complexity versus advantage. I think the dual H7 is really compelling, basically replacing IRMCU with an H7. That's really compelling, and obviously you're doing the hardware already, and definitely worthwhile. The F4 support within the H757s, I've yet to see a really good advantage that brings us.
Yeah, one of the thing I was thinking about, like giving an access to a, like, you have this Lua skipping thing, but what if someone actually wants to write a C++ application for a second core and fetch the information
Right.
from the artifact itself forward, through some mechanism? I think that would be quite interesting as well. So, it can run as a separate program.
Yeah,
if it wants to.
it's the getting the APIs and the linking
Yeah.
and the build system, etc. It's quite complex. It adds a big level of complexity for the project, a
Yeah.
maintenance complexity.
Yeah,
So
I'm hoping it. I'm hoping it to be quite simple, like as a separate project, which just RTPilot just compiles as part of the code base, but it is maintained separate to RTPilot itself, so that it doesn't add, the maintenance load on RTPilot. But let's see. I mean, I haven't evaluated it properly. It's just some idea in my head for now.
right, okay.
Trich, something that comes from the experience with commercial systems, and it is the battery management, energy management system that we are just providing the basics. Shouldn't we perhaps start looking at that part of the systems in a different way, perhaps with some AP peripheral boards that would control this, and the partners could build it for the battery management systems? It's just a rough idea.
First thing I'd like to see is, more availability of AP periph battery monitor CAN nodes, and to start getting those more widely used. So
it's a problem of chicken and egg, right?
I know, but just like AP periph was created to solve that chicken and egg problem. The hardware vendors didn't have the software bandwidth to create those. So we've solved chicken and egg problems before.
Question on that is, what type of ICs are you going to support, or like what level of depth are you going to get into that in terms of the hardware?
Don't know. I mean, talking about microcontrollers, big question is, are we going to do a GD32 support in the next year? There's been some partners really pushing for GD32 because they're available. You can buy them, and they're available with 3 megabytes of flash, which is also very attractive.
But from my commercial usage of platforms, I think it's perhaps where we lack the most for a wider adoption.
Battery management.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's something that Josh has done a bit of work, and we need to get you some of those smart batteries, Josh, that you said you needed to get some of those ones. I've got a couple sitting on my shelf. So if you can't get the ones
Eric's
from
sending me 2.
Oh, great. Okay.
From High Tech. And then I'm gonna, if the funding committee approves it, get 3 from Artori. So then I'll have 5 on the bus for I2C stuff. And I have 3 UAV CAN ones from Pomegranate.
Right. Okay, great.
So that's
a good selection.
Do a lot for that.
Well, hold on. I have all that hardware too. What was it that you're doing?
I just want to get a bunch of I2C ones on the bus because of that stupid SM bus delay that causes issues that Michael's worried about in my PR for the smart battery info stuff.
Okay.
Because it just needs something, because I'm not great at the threading, or I just need someone else to help me with like that one part of that one function to make it happy and him happy to know that it'll work.
Can you throw that PR into the system folder?
Sure.
Or maybe that's a perf thing.
It's right now it's just like a mavlink, and then eventually drone can thing.
But the intention is to be for AP to be, well, okay, yeah, because it is.
Tom and I can probably agree right now to fund those batteries, given that you've got 2 out of 3 of the funding committee on the call.
Yeah.
It works for me.
Thumbs up.
I'm trying to, so Paul apparently can't edit and add things at the moment. I'm trying to work out how we control who has write access into here.
I go to GitHub, I'm logged in, but then when I follow the link, I'm not logged in. So
okay. I think you need to work out how to get logged in again.
Okay, see what it's doing.
That's something in the try a different browser, maybe.
Yeah, maybe I'll try something. Yeah.
Top right, you see the sign in.
If you want me to add something for you, happy to be a proxy, Paul.
Let me see. I'll see if I can try doing a sign in, see if that works.
All right.
So Tridge, I'm not trying to volunteer you, but you did mention to me Zephyr once as something or other you wanted to think about.
Yeah, it's one that it'd be a great experiment to look at Zephyr as a possible port. If just because it supports such a wide range of microcontrollers, it would get us NXP support relatively easily, and it does seem to be a reasonably active, vibrant community. So, but I have no bandwidth to put into it at the moment.
I've been looking at Zephyr actually. I've been recently playing around for some other project. Yeah, I think it is a nice project with the it has a different mechanism of setting up the pins and all. I think our hardware definition can quite nicely integrate with that. So yeah, it's certainly possible to add support for Zephyr. It should not be. I think it should be even less tricky than the GBOS one, because it just has so many drivers already implemented and so much easier to use. So yeah, I think it is quite possible to add support for it.
It's a matter of just is it?
Yeah, working on it. Yeah.
Yeah. How urgent is it? Relative priority of that versus all the other things.
Well, if you're thinking about putting effort into, say, the GD32s, for example, maybe you might be better off avoiding the Chinese clones and going for the NXP chips.
I don't know if they're more available at the moment. The other thing is pricing. The vendors who are asking for GD32 tend to be very price sensitive.
And doesn't Zephyr get you more than just STM32 level processing power? Can you go then way up into many
GBOS runs
gigahertz,
on desktop levels as well. But yes, Zephyr would open the gate to a wider range of processing power. Yeah.
Like
in front of my,
that's sort of my interest.
This is a 800 megahertz Teensy. It's
right.
an IMX 1062 from NXP, and it's cheap as chips. And 800 megahertz. That's pretty much all I need to say. 12 UARTs or something.
That's right. Yeah, Teensy Zephyr with Teensy. That is actually a fairly compelling argument, Buzz. Yeah.
What about like a couple of areas that we're perhaps a little weaker in? One of them is camera gimbals, I think. And I know that there's some gimbals that have that rely on Ethernet. Is that right? I feel like we had a blocker on adding support for some gimbals because they required Ethernet support. And I guess Tom P has put in an item here for AP network, full-ish network stack support. Is that Ethernet?
Yeah, I've Sid and I've been working on something. I actually have a library of an AP network for doing stuff like that already.
And I guess Peter Hall also did some work on adding support for an Ethernet-based gimbal, right? Have we lost?
I think I did some work on the on-with camera support. So I think technically, yeah. Sorry, so I think I did add some support for on-with camera control, and currently I think it is only running on Linux, basically Linux-based systems, because we don't have the networking layer yet for normal RG Pilot. But yeah, as Tom just put it there, we are working on AP network for GPOS based boards as well. So in the future, you can expect. I mean, especially with the QBRED, we'll have Ethernet support, which will be able to control all these type of hardware. So
Okay.
yeah, expect to see things like this by next year. I think by next year you will see things like that popping up.
So am I right? Am I right in thinking that there are a lot of gimbals out there that require Ethernet? I mean, I have one here, but I don't.
Yeah, I mean, OnWIF is one of the most commonly used, high-end camera control system, and it uses this protocol called SOAP, which runs over IP protocol. So yeah, it is quite common. Yeah.
So I guess the only
Very
other option
common.
would be add a little Raspberry Pi or something like that, Raspberry Pi Zero or something, and have a little Mav link to OnWIF converter. I guess that would be another solution.
Yeah, I mean, so basically you can run sort of like an antenna tracker based Linux on your Raspberry Pi, and command it to do, because it is controlled by Mavlink. So you can technically just run antenna tracker right now on the Linux, which can accept the Mavlink commands to control the antenna tracker, and you will basically have the solution you're looking for right now.
Well,
because we support OnWIF.
I think that that Randy is missing a thing. The thing that we're doing with the AP network type stuff means that we would not need the Raspberry Pi. We have direct.
But Randy is saying for now, is there a solution? So I'm telling, there is. If you use the current OnWIF implementation, which runs on Linux as an antenna tracker, you can technically control that OnWIF camera using the Mavlink setup. So you run the antenna tracker application on the Raspberry Pi, which is connected to the camera through Ethernet and to the autopilot via a serial port, and you can just send the commands to the antenna tracker to move that camera gimbal, and it will send the relevant and OnWIF command to rotate that camera.
Okay, and is that worth it? Obviously, I mean, that depends on how much my time is worth or whatever, whoever's the developer's worth. But how long is it going to be for the if we could do it all inside of RG Pilot on
I think it's
Ethernet. Is the Ethernet support still like a year away, or what do you think?
Yeah, Ethernet support is in a year away, but what I just said is currently supported. You probably don't even need to write a single line of code for that. You can just set up. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably a video is needed to show that, but it is possible. Yeah.
I mean, I could say that it's. I mean. I think it's more about a hardware availability a year away to really deploy it.
That is right.
The software is further along. That I mean, I have it working on not a deployed thing. It's still kind of experimental, but it's on an AP perif implementation. But it could easily be on a vehicle, hosting a web page with embedded files in it. So it's running a whole, HTTPS. Or HTML web server, multiple IP, UDP and TCP connections. I'm streaming some JSON, some Mavlink, a variety of different things over IP. So
the test hardware, there's also we support the Holybro 5X. It's got an Ethernet connector on it already on their standard board. And so that makes for an easy test platform. Plus the things like these little Nucleos have, like this Nucleo here has an Ethernet connector on the end of it.
So I have that. I have that board and another board that I've been using. But so far, all I've needed it for was for perif devices. By the way, our aircraft has like a dozen perfs in it. And we have just a whole bunch of things that are all interchangeable and stuff. So we've been diving in hard with the perif things.
Tom, a quick question. If you have 12 peripherals, how do you sort out the issue of updating all of them? It's a one by one, or can it be
sorting out what thing? What?
Sort out the updating of firmware on those peripherals. Imagine that you have 12 peripherals, all CAN bus.
Yeah,
can
well, so they're
run-
all, a lot of them are actually different hardware platforms. So yeah, usually they're for the most part pre-programmed at least initially before they go into the aircraft, so that we know how to identify them. But yeah, so I mean, once they're in there, plus they're on different buses. So on our aircraft, we have one bus that's like the fuselage, and the one bus that's the wing, so we can kind of identify which. But we have things. I shouldn't say a dozen perifs, but we have a dozen
Yeah, but
CAN
regardless, Tom,
devices.
the issue is when you have multiple peripherals on the vehicle, we don't have an easy way through ArduPilot to update the firmware of all of them. So you might have, imagine one battery with a firmware, and the next battery comes with a different firmware and we behave differently, or a GPS.
Firmware update
Well,
from microSD would be worthwhile for peripherals.
Yeah, to answer your question, Luis,
right.
is for that is you can there's two things. You can update the firmware, no problem, by targeting each one and do the updates. But also you can, there's a board serial num the parameter that's in there. So if you actually set that to 1 through whatever 32,000, then it will actually identify that in the name. I appended it in the name, so when it says org.arduPilot or whatever name it is, it'll actually have in parentheses the board number, so you can identify it just in your list of devices.
But I think everyone knows what I'm trying to say. So it is, we don't take care of the firmware that is available on peripherals. So you can plug in an old U-Blocks GPS with an old version, and we don't have a warning to the user or an easy way to update that firmware. So if we
I think this is more a GCS, or the basically the configurator and thing, because I think this information is very difficult to encode in the autopilot itself. That's my thinking, I guess.
The CAN over Mavlink will make this easier, because it means the ground station, without going to a USB cable, etc., just over your radio link, you can get the firmware versions of all of your nodes into the ground station, and then you can actually update it from your ground station. That should make life a lot easier. But I do think we should be able to support updating firmware, both of the FMU and of your peripherals, from the microSD, which allows for easier bulk update. So you could say that all of these models of ESC should be running that firmware, and you just put that firmware on the microSD, and then it could then do a bulk update out to all of them where the FMU drives that. I think that would be quite nice.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Or I wonder if it can be part of like a firmware update package where the firmware first updates itself, and then there is additional like API files that you also want to upload in some same update cycle, right? So first it flashes the firmware and then puts the file in the SD card, so that you have this whole thing, as a single click setup, rather than going through the manual process of updating each and every hardware. So if you have a drone, basically with multiple peripherals, you have a single firmware file for that drone to do that all of that update.
One thing to think about that I just saw Matt's massive number of airspeed changes, is how to support angle of attack and side slip sensors, because we're getting requests from those from some of our partners, and a few PRs here and there, both in terms of logging, estimation, control, all those things.
Oh, that reminds me of the air brake from Sideslip.
Oh yes, okay. That's actually that's a nice little one to add. I'll just put in that. Are you going to put that in, Tom, or shall I add it in?
I'm already tapping it in right now.
Right. Yeah. That's a nice, easy one to do. That could just be a gain, and you could do it as a negative gain for doing left rudder versus right rudder.
There was also something for air braking that we've kind of been talking about internally, but haven't really done much about is air braking via windmilling on the prop. So if you actually have 1 or 2% of your throttle, it actually has a net negative drag.
Yes, so that's one I've thought for gliders, particularly bringing them down. Yeah, so air braking throttle percentage.
Yeah, so it needs a complicated like
well, to do it really
weird
properly, you
curve.
sort of need to know that what advance ratio and that sort of thing to really, but you could just have a throttle percentage that is used, during the landing approach, not once you're in touchdown. Once you're in the final bit, you want to probably turn off your motor to not break the prop on the ground. But during the approach, you want to have like a minimum one to increase drag.
Yeah, and a lot of it too is just to drop altitude without overspeeding.
Yeah, the combination of the side slip and the throttle percentage could actually make for much steeper, more accurate landings.
Yeah, on our previous version of the aircraft, we had proper air brakes where we had 3 flight surfaces on it. So we had differential spoilers and all that, and we would just drop out of the sky if we wanted to. It was really nice.
But a fuselage is a pretty good air brake.
Yeah.
A couple items I'm wondering about. Was it Leonard who brought up the point earlier about the Lewis scripting flight modes? Did we add that somewhere? I couldn't quite see it.
It's sort of in like AP vehicle level, right? It's
not exactly system, not exactly copter.
Yeah, I mean, probably one of the vehicles will take the plunge first and add proper support for it. But yes, I would very much like that.
Stick it in copter for now. Also,
It'd
how
be
about
nice to be able to get rid of things like zigzag out to a Lewis script.
Yeah, it's going to be tricky. Zigzag is actually going to be a tricky one, but there's others that could go perhaps.
Yeah,
I know zigzag is always the example that people bring up. It's had some tricky bits added to it since it was first added to the code.
That just makes it a good case to make sure that it's fully featured.
Yeah, I guess.
One big one, which is potentially, is very complicated, Leonard, is what do you think about supporting airspeed and S-curves, which I know has been battered around a bit.
That's actually, that's, the hooks are already there. I have been thinking about that because heli has some potential use of that. There's a number of different ways we can do that, from actually physically changing the forward speed just by do set speed, but the new pause mission functionality and also the train following functionality both enable you to slow down the forward speed as you need to in S-curves, basically at will on a slider, and that could be used to sort of scale between 0 and 100% speed to maintain a particular airspeed. So yeah.
Okay, sounds really good. Cool.
Yeah, there's options there, and those hooks are there and fully just ready to use. It just may not be compatible with both that and terrain following or something.
Sure.
I guess the other area is object avoidance, and a couple come to mind. I know that Trid, you mentioned earlier today, Lewis script-based bendy ruler.
I've got that listed in the plane. Yeah, that's a really big item for the next major release.
And I guess in copter, there's a couple of items that we've left on the table from Reshab, including 3D loiter, the 3D back away in loiter.
Also, a big topic that we didn't talk about, or that was a talk, was redundancy.
Ah, yes. There's
we've got the dual H7 support. Yeah, and that's related to that. I mean, that's sort of the likely hardware platform that we will work towards supporting, but that once that works, that should support redundancy on all sorts of dual setups. But I think the one that people, if you've got a flight controller out there with built-in redundancy, that's going to be the one that people are going to choose. So I think concentrating on that one.
Well, yeah, but I think there's software components and there's dual H7 is kind of a hardware component.
Yeah, there's a lot of software components needed. So we could list that separately, the redundancy. And in particular, we have to have it in CITL as well. SID's already paved the way for that with the AP preference CITL, which is 2 processes. But, we need to support, dual RG pilot in CITL. So you can just fire up with an option to sim vehicle that says, I want 4-way redundancy or whatever.
Yeah, they would need to do things a little bit differently and perhaps rejig the way we do the simulated the CAN GPS stuff and perhaps pass around the the world state when it comes to it rather than the GPS data.
We've got to work out the topology for Mavlink in that. Do we, does it try to appear as a single system ID? Does it try to appear as an aggregate system ID plus a system ID for each of the redundant nodes, which I know Buzz has done before?
These redundant nodes. So these redundant nodes, will they talk on drone CAN, or what protocol are we thinking they will be talking about?
Well, both. We've got to work out how it works at the CAN level. We've also got to work out at the Mavlink level how it appears to the ground station. If you've got, a triple redundant flight controller, does that appear as a single system, in your little drop down on the ground station, or can you drill into separate ones?
I think the master broadcasts both on its own, and the canonical vehicle system ID, and the other 2 just broadcast on their own or send on their own.
Do we want to have a concept of master in the first place in redundant system?
We had a virtual ID that was handed around between whoever was in charge. So you had system ID 2, system ID 3, and system ID 1 was the virtual one.
I would have thought
that might be the way to go.
I would have thought said anything not in standby was considered the master.
Right.
But yeah, like the master, the master hardware or whatever is always using component ID 0 or something, and the other guys have their own little component IDs.
How did you go with the duplication of data? Because I just said that you'd send on your own ID and the master ID.
Yep.
But that's kind of wasteful of bandwidth. We don't have that much bandwidth on the radios.
Yep. So we had 3 sets of HUDs, like 3 like horizons on the HUD, and you could split the Mavlink streams out, and you can set the stream rates separately on them. So we had the master had a much higher stream rate, and the slaves didn't.
Right.
So that was convenient.
Cool.
Gives you situational awareness about the overall state of the aircraft when you've got 3 or 4 or 5 horizons, and one of them diverges, but the rest don't.
I think also the drone CAN will need an update. I mean, I guess the DNA needs to be more distributed and centralized as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of work for it to get redundancy done right. I don't think we should necessarily aim to do it perfect first time. Getting some level of support for dual H7 is worthwhile.
Yeah,
because otherwise it'll just never happen.
Switch, right? If you just do it on the switch, that would be the first step, right? And that's
right.
a massive step forward.
Yeah. Yep.
A couple of points around the redundancies. Like, we already have the ability to run multiple instances of CITL and sort of have the framework to be able to kind of talk to a companion computer which sits on top, or some other system which sort of moves between different vehicles or different flight controllers. So that's already there. And then the other thing that we have to bear in mind is that I think one of the biggest interests in redundancy is actually because people want to use ArduPilot, which is a non-certified system in a certified aircraft, which means that the main reason for going for redundancy is to have to move away from common cause faults in the firmware. So, there's only in terms of, we need to think of redundancy around how do we support like companion systems from being able to sit on top of ArduPilot and then other systems to move between them, because that's one of the key interests of redundancy, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, software diversity and running 2 different versions of Arduino would be something that we could, test ourselves. You might run 2 slightly different versions, but yeah, it's harder to know what to do about actually running full diversity, running a completely different flight stack on another node and how we interact with it.
Can't imagine there's any standards around this. I think it's all
Drone can, Drone can is the standard for potentially that can be used here. Hoping that people who are developing other nodes to be used as a flight control, as a parent flight control, use the drone can protocol. That would be the protocol to use to communicate over, I guess.
Yeah, in fact, actually, I was doing that at Intel. I had a design that was semi-functional. That was they were both the same version of Arduino, but one was running on a Linux embedded computer, and then another one on an STM, and they could fall back to each other, master-slave style. So that's
the problem with master slave is that there's no way to decide the truth. The system I worked on was triple redundant, so we had to basically they voted on which 2 agreed the most, and the 3rd one was out.
Yeah.
Actually, so the one I was working on wasn't necessarily a master slave, but it was designed that Linux is kind of your primary, and you could always fall back. But basically, the idea was you could reboot your Linux computer and still be flying. Was the idea?
Yeah.
Or at least fly home or whatever.
I wonder if there's items in like the non-GPS area that we haven't included. So we talked about object avoidance. We talked about.
Yeah, I'd love to get the ANU VIO system integrated. That just depends on working with the ANU people on that.
Anything else? I put upward-facing optical flow is an item that I added. Just wondering if there's other non-GPS stuff.
I'm afraid that this list is so big that I kept throwing stuff on there that I'm not sure is actually a legitimate 2022 item.
Yeah.
As long as you're planning to do it.
Yeah, in fact, I put string params and then I removed it.
Yeah, it's not fair to like put stuff on Tridge or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You're only supposed to put your own pledges on there, not like things you want Tridge to do for you.
You could put a year in there that you think to get it done by 2030.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Tom's wanted it since like 2015.
I think with Ethernet stuff, we will definitely need it.
Yeah, if only we could just, if I could just take a whole year off work and just like spend a year on implementing that, we'd be.
Well, that would be work, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, it'd be. Yeah, that's true.
This concept of taking a year off work and then working on work, sort of, it's.
Yeah. Seems like it's a holiday for Tom if he's working on parameter system. A vacation. Yeah.
They're pretty good.
Only you knew.
Equivalent of busman's holiday, but Arduino devs. Yeah. This is pretty good. This is there's a long list under system, so I think particularly Sid and I are going to be busy this next year.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that we
don't plan on any big events like getting married or anything like that. Sid,
Yeah, I'm getting that.
No time.
This month itself. So yeah, that's over with. So we can continue later then. We'll have all the time we will have.
It may be worthwhile to bring drone count out to its own column.
Is there any interest in pushing forwards in the like developing the RC input to support multi-RC input, like starting that structural work that we'll need to get done?
I've actually done some of that already. I actually pushed in some changes. I don't know whether you saw it, emerged in some changes to improve that already, Leonard. It's not quite to the level that you described, but it's a lot better than at the point when we discussed it that call a few weeks back, I basically found a shortcut to achieve a fair chunk of what's needed. But yeah, there's more to be done. So for example, you are now, when it switches between the two, that you actually get a notification on the ground station that it switched between the two and which one it switched to. And it now switches fast without a fail-safe happening in between. And so it's already, 70% of the way there to what we discussed.
Yeah, because a lot of this stuff, it's not, you try and do it all at once and it's just too big a thing to chew off.
Yeah,
That's what
I thought it was going to be a huge job, and I found a short circuit. And I'm also now flying regularly an aircraft with dual RC on it. And two different RC systems, one the RFD 900X using S-bus output and a F port. So I've got both of them in a quad plane, and I can switch between them. So it means it's getting regular testing.
Yeah, I wanted to do the throttle time constant takeoff, for a couple of years now, but it's been one of those things where I've got a list of things I have to get out of the way before I'm able to actually tackle that problem. And I think I've actually got everything cleared to a point where I can actually attack that problem now. So fingers crossed. But yeah, so I'm not sure if we need to put everything in there or if there's just little steps along the way that we could isolate to try and get done.
Looking at this list, I reckon you got off pretty light for this coming up year, Leonard.
I know the copters looking like
it's done. Copters are done. Their history.
Well, we've got through it. It's getting pretty damn polished now. Getting guided mode sorted out, and like all of the big stuff's been done. If we can get this takeoff stuff,
vectored motors.
What's that?
Vectored motors, thrust that doesn't go up.
Yeah, but that's a different frame altogether.
It could come in scope in copter.
Oh yeah, it could. My point is that's a frame problem, not a copter framework. Like that's an individual frame class thing. There are a few, there's potentially some more flexibility in vector, like in the way we handle, we talked about the VTOL thrust vector problem with the wing.
Yes.
I've deliberately added handling in there that would allow different frames to implement that thrust vector differently, but we haven't actually separated that out and made it usable, for example. But
I'd like to have support for asymmetric acceleration, velocity, and jerk limits, so we can have a different accel limit. Remember, like that discussion we had on the quad plane, ship landing. I'd like to have a higher limit on pitch up, in a quad plane than I have in roll right, acceleration, that sort of thing. So some asymmetry, because currently that's done as a uniform limit that's omnidirectional. So, I've had to hack that in at the moment, but there's some downsides to the hacking it in that aren't great. So that's something that I might come back and discuss with you a bit more when you've, got a bit of free time.
Well, the things like the S-curve, the S-curve's navigation with that, it's sort of along the same sorts of lines with the lateral thrust for corner accelerations, and accelerating and braking acceleration limits being different and things like that. A lot of that stuff I don't do simply because the number of extra parameters that would be required to support that. And until I've got something that's a clear example of needing it, it's hard to even envisage when I would need it. So
I think I can explain a pretty clear case for quad plane.
Yeah, with the quad plane stuff, that is a clear case, and we've talked about that. So we can.
You're also going to have to help Michelle get S curves into blimp.
Yeah, I saw that too. That's a good one.
Yeah. I did see
that.
That
mean plane's the only holdout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's got to be done appropriately, right? I'm not like, S curves isn't just the generic solution to everything.
Oh,
It's not.
I thought it was.
Yeah, just get
Makes you
just
breakfast.
Put it in, and then ask Leonard to tell me why
That's
it's
right.
not working.
S curves is a way of transferring all your problems down to Adelaide.
Yeah. Oh, shark asymmetric. Asymmetric limits, asymmetric body frame limits in as a POS controller consideration. I can't promise anything because I don't have a solution for it, but it's something to think about.
Yep. All right. I think we're getting close to being done.
Yeah, looks good. I wonder if there's anybody missing here from this meeting who probably are a couple of people.
Submarine missing. What? We don't have anything on sub.
Yeah,
that's true. S curves.
It's already gone. Already got him.
Done it. What? Look at Leonard's problem.
No, it actually does technically have S curves. It's just that it doesn't make use of them. So it stops at every waypoint. So it never gets the sexy cornering because it's always with the
okay.
So.
Well, but this is sub. Were you talking about
Paul
sub
had,
then?
Yes.
Question for Pete. Pete Hall.
Shoot.
Landing detection, tail sitters.
Yep.
Improvements.
Probably.
Especially for non-vectored.
Yep.
Pete, that was very committed.
Well, I mean, you know me, I bat around and work on all sorts of random stuff as the fancy takes me. We'll probably do it this year.
I like that. As the fancy takes me.
Yeah, you gotta have fun.
Paul had mentioned an interest in text, and I was looking at my issues list, and like 4 years ago or something, I have an issue. No, 6 years ago, I have an issue that I put auto tune for text.
Yeah.
Yes, I would very much like auto tune for text. So I'll put that under plain. I have actually had a bit of a discussion with Paul about how we might do that. How we might do at least part of it.
You could put Tom's name on it, get him to do it.
Yeah, I was gonna say I can't do that.
Another vacation.
I think
Another vacation.
I think what we can do is, at least for some of the parameters, we can tell that the parameter is definitely too big or definitely too small, and a bit like we do servo auto trim, drift it towards the right value in normal flight. So I'd like it to be, rather than an auto tune mode, I'd love it to be some way, a bit like servo auto trim, where it just, as you fly, it just gets better and better.
For the record, I wasn't volunteering, but I was trying to throw Paul under the bus on that one.
I've wanted that for ages. Yeah. All good.
You never commented on the issue from 2016.
Oh, okay. Well. Yeah.
Yeah, and a big one for playing is the stall detection recovery stuff. I tossed in my PRs in there, but they need to get reworked a little bit probably. And but
and I've got
been
a
using it for
version
a while,
of that as well. Yeah, I've been discussing it a bit with Josh lately as well. All good. I'm getting pretty tired, and Henry, I'm amazed that you're still awake. Middle of the night. That is dedication. So
no, it's early morning. I just got up at 5 a.m. for Pete's talk. That's all.
Yep. Right. Okay.
Welcome to the US.
Okay. You weren't up all night then. Right.
Might just be self-preservation too. Make sure nobody lines you up to something when you're asleep.
I actually looked at my bag.
You can add stuff later.
I had my alarm set for Sid's talk, and then I was like, oh, I don't think I can do it. So, but I woke up for this one.
Yeah. Oh, good. Well, okay. So thank you all.
What was that, Sid?
And we'll have to work out how the conference format's going to work next year, because you know, how many of the people are coming to Canberra versus how many are done remotely.
There's recording.
Yeah.
All right.
Is that pizza going to be cold next year? I think it's cold. And
well, the pizza place, I spoke to them last week. The orders
I think
set. We've got a date. So yeah, we ordered the pizza in 2019.
What you're saying is, if nobody actually comes physically, then we get more pizza.
We get to eat a lot of pizza. Yes, an awful lot of pizza. We will have to
if your
invite many
definition
friends
of
over.
cold is snowing, it's probably not going to be that cold.
Yeah, that's fresh made pizza. All good. All right. Well, thank you to all the presenters at this conference. It was a great conference this year. Really enjoyed it. There was some really good presentations, and thank you for all the input on this last session of what we're going to try and get done over the next year. Very much aspirational. I'm sure, like in previous years, we won't get it all done, but hopefully we'll take a good stab at it. We've got Andy to add in the plain aerobatics with the stuff that we're working on there. Get that rolled out. And I loved that aerobatic editor that you discovered. If people didn't see that, the Open Aero one. It turns out there is actually already a web-based aerobatic maneuver editor with a language associated with it for describing them. So absolutely great looking stuff.
On that quickly, Tridge, how easy is all that stuff to transfer to like run multi-rotor style acrobatics? Like to do that in Copter? Is it all the stuff that you done there? Can it be sort of transferred across easy enough or not?
A fair bit of it, yeah. Look,
I think it's already there. Actually.
Yeah,
done.
I think you could do it. So I mean,
all of the guided commands are right there. Like I could write just if I had a scripting thing, I could literally write an acrobatic routine guided, correct, and lure.
We should write set of example ones for an auto mission, including loops and copters.
There's the fast descent one, which is a spiral. It's not a loop, but it's a spiral. That's done within auto. So it's guided within auto. It's Lua using guided within auto. So that works. You can't. The thing which is different is that you can't trigger it easily, while you're flying along in stabilized mode or something like that. Right. It doesn't. It's not part of any mode. It's just
the tricks on a switch.
Guided in auto.
Yeah. I was very serious about running a acrobatic routine using a Callisto.
That'd be great.
Cool. Like it would handle it absolutely no problems. So if we can sort of get a structure together to do that, I can.
Yeah. TikToks for heli. I'd love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
With the negative collective, we could do that in the new guided functionality that we've got for sure.
I think it'll work. I think it'll work.
Yeah, I'd love to get an aerobatic routine for helicopters going.
And scripting might actually reopen the helical landing for planes.
Does Pete's 6-off copter count as acrobatic if it turns itself upside down?
Well,
sort of. Yeah,
it would be a very interesting display.
Yeah, with the right LEDs on it. Yep. Oh, good. All right. Well, I think it's probably about time that we close up. So thank you all. It's been a fantastic year. Looking forward to seeing some of you in person next year. And let's get to it and make this another great year for ArduPilot. And thank you to all our users out there who are watching the videos. We love the feedback we get on new releases, and please test the betas. That's incredibly important contribution to test our beta releases and report problems when you find them. Nice detailed problem reports with logs, really important. So thank you very much to our whole user community, and of course to our partners for helping to support ArduPilot. It's absolutely, the partner program has just been exploding over the last year, huge numbers of new partners joining, and it's been really great working with all the new partners. So All good. Thank you all for a great year, and have another great year coming up. Bye, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Cheers, thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
See ya.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.